The Brendan Banfield murder trial wrapping up for day 5 of testimony. You see Brendan there. He's about to leave the courtroom. The judge just told the jurors they could go home. I mean, I feel like we were just here. So we heard they brought Gary Benson up to the stand to testify, and this is Christine's father. And we knew that he was going to be called to testify, but I think when we discussed it, we've been discussing it the past few days, we thought it'd be emotional. It was not very emotional. Let's talk about what was said. So the prosecutor asked Gary Benson about Christine's childhood, if she played sports, if she was, easily got injured, and he talked about how she bruised easily, got nosebleeds often. Why was that the question the prosecutors asked him?
I'm speculating.
Yeah.
It was interesting. We thought they would end with something emotional, right? We talked about that at the last break. My speculation is that because she had a blood disorder and bruised easily, and her dad, who seems like a completely wonderful person in the world, has indicated that she has had these physical problems for a long time, since she was a child. That she didn't play any contact sports, she didn't take part in anything that was of a super physical nature. I don't want to jump to what the prosecutor was trying to do there, but perhaps they were suggesting that a person with those types of physical limitations would not necessarily want to engage in the type of adult activity that is at issue here. That she was not one to perhaps participate in the type of fantasy activity that's involved in this case. Someone with that type of fragile condition. So kind of dancing around this issue a little bit, but I think that's what they were getting at, is that a person with these physical limitations would not want that type of fantasy situation with somebody on top of them in that type of scenario. That's what I think they're getting at.
Do you think that message, if you will, was clear to jurors? Do you think they're walking away confused, or do you think they understand? I know you're speculating, but what other reason could that conversation have been about? Do you think they understand?
I think they understand.
Okay.
Again, the jurors are probably the smartest ones in the room.
Right.
They understand the nature of that testimony. That could be very impactful testimony. Now, what we saw a little glimpse of is that the defense apparently has witnesses that are lined up, and there may be some evidence to contradict that theory that the prosecutor just put out. You saw Mr. Carroll ask about mud runs and mud events and those types of things, which for edification of the jurors or the viewers, those are very physical. They include running over obstacles and through the mud and whatnot. So I bet you that the defense will call a witness, or perhaps a police officer even, to elicit the fact that she did involve herself in some very physical activities. Again, we'll see, but it was kind of an interesting end to the prosecutor's case, and certainly a quick end. We had talked about 2 or 3 weeks of a prosecution case, and here they are 1 week in, they've just rested their case.
Yeah, and for hours we heard from a witness who testified about blood splatter, and then we expected Gary Benson to get up there. We thought it was going to be emotional, and it was just this quick thing to highlight that Christine was injury prone. I thought it was interesting, and we talked about it while it was happening, but we saw defense attorney John Carroll kind of hesitate when he said he had redirect. And we couldn't see what was going on, but we have seen what has been going on at that table. It's been Brendan and him talking. Brendan is very much involved in his defense. What do you think that conversation was?
I think that conversation went along the lines of many conversations I've had with my clients. I think the testimony was anticipated to be much worse than it actually was. Mr. Carroll had some objections that were sustained. So I thought the defense attorney was thinking, wow, this is going to be really bad. And it actually didn't turn out so bad during the direct testimony. I think he wanted to get up and say, no questions, I'm sorry for your loss, sir, and that's all I have. It seemed like his client really wanted him to ask some questions. So there was a little back and forth between client and lawyer, and Mr. Carroll, as usual, cool as a cucumber, stood up and asked some questions. I think that was probably the max that he wanted to do. I think he really wanted to do nothing. I think his client kind of fidgeted his way and kind of forced a couple questions to come out of Mr. Carroll's mouth. He did a really nice job. He placated his client. He still scored a point or two on cross-examination, and then he sat down. That was really nicely done.
All right, now Gary Benson had been in the courtroom, as we know, since day one. The judge allowed it. Now I think we understand why she allowed it. Do you think she knew, or why would you allow somebody who's testifying?
There's a special exception sometimes for the victim's family members to be there, especially if they're not going to give any factual testimony. He wasn't there that fateful day. He wasn't there before or after, so he wasn't really giving any present factual testimony. He was really just going to deal with historical testimony and maybe some emotional testimony about his relationship. Under those circumstances, sometimes the court will allow a family member to sit there. The judge did exercise her discretion to do that. That is sometimes done. His testimony really won't have much of an impact. It wasn't very emotional, really wasn't very factual, and I think even the factual part is going to be refuted later on. But he did get the opportunity to witness the entire trial, which I'm sure was really difficult. As we have talked about before, this is an absolute, no matter how this case turns out, it's an absolute tragedy for everybody involved, from the 4-year-old child to everyone that was involved in this situation.
And he's seen just incredibly upsetting stuff. I do want to talk about the moments before Gary Benson took the stand. We heard the judge say to defense attorney John Carroll, he was asking, hey, what's the timeline? I have my witnesses on standby. And we heard the judge say, you can excuse them for the day. We're probably not going to get to them. So I do expect that we will hear from John Carroll's witnesses tomorrow. We'll see how many. The judge did excuse the jurors for the day. So we will be back tomorrow morning. We will be streaming here live on WUSA 9 Plus starting at 9:45 a.m. Annie, you and I will be giving you a recap of what has happened the past few days through this trial, and then we will be streaming the trial live on WUSA 9 Plus, which you can download free to your smart TV, and on YouTube as well. So make sure you are tuning in. And of course, if you have questions for Frank or any of our legal experts, you can text those questions into 202-895-5599, and we will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9:45.